People first toward a humane workplace. Thought a lot about the workplace from various perspectives. I was in it for a long time. While I was at university, my second year of university, I worked full time in a manufacturing plant. Uh, had a drill in hand, installed curtains in Airstream trailers. So not only could they tease me about being college kid, but also curtain hanger. Hey, curtain hanger, whatever. Anyway, I've been in the plant while at university studying, among other things, philosophy. Ran across a little article that Karl Marx wrote. Now, bear with me, this is before Das Kapital and some of his later writings about dialectical materialism and all that kind of stuff. But this was an interesting little essay. Karl Marx was writing at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and he's watching the transition of work going from craftsman to industrial workplace, where, like the American poem, The Village Smithy, there'd be somebody who was really good at making metal and could do anything from wrought iron tools and things to hang over the fireplace to other tools and things for the kitchen and all kinds of stuff. Craftsman. A part of thinking philosophically, a part of that craftsman's soul, and it would be a man maybe, or women were the same way in all the different kinds of crafts and things that they did, either for their own home or to sell or furnish for other people. And so there's a little bit of you. If you've done that, if you're a craftsperson in all kinds of stuff, carpentry or electronics or whatever it might be, and I think all the electronics I built, I don't know if any of my soul was in that. But anyway, Karl Marx wrote this essay, and the gist of his essay was looking at the due industrialization. He saw how human beings were now cogs in the machine, and he called it alienation, that the human being is alienated from the products of their work. They just do one little thing, one little thing, one little thing, and that product that's out there just doesn't seem to be part of their soul. And that had me thinking that probably could have been my master's topic. My master's degree work was theoretically in political philosophy, but the university professors of that department decided to cut out the graduate program. And just as well, I think I was happier going back into the technical field than academia, which would have driven me freaking crazy. But anyway, thinking about Marx and alienation and people and their work, and I'm going to develop that a little bit more into today's manufacturing. Speaking of today's podcast is sponsored by Inductive Automation, my longtime sponsor, a company that I appreciate for many reasons, amongst which they have sponsored me for years. They're the makers of Ignition, the world's most versatile industrial automation platform for connecting data, systems, and people. With the new Ignition 8.3 release, you can easily manage time series and event data, quickly create custom graphics with onboard drawing tools, and centralize control using Ignition's new gateway interface with global search and deep link launching, providing additional support for Git, containers, and private data protection to go along with its unlimited licensing. Ignition 8.3 takes industrial operations to the next level. Download Ignition for free at inductiveautomation.com. Inductive automation spelled just like it sounds. So going from Marx, there's another philosopher that I've run across in the last several years. Irish, he was a priest for a while, as a PhD studying Hegel, amongst other things, which is kind of interesting in its own right. John O'Donohue, and writing in his one of his main books, Anam Cara, and we won't go into the Gaelic and all that stuff, but O'Donohue also in his writing became a consultant or a speaker for a lot of companies on his work with people in manufacturing and people in the workplace. And he talks a little bit about in this section that I'm going to look at from Anam Cara. Many people desperately hunger for power. Many of the people who are desperately hunger for power are weak. Keven Meyer, whom I'll refer to later, and I've followed a long time as a mentor of mine over the web in lean manufacturing, also points out the fact that often the best leaders that he has run into are the quietest people in the room. I have seen that in my life. Unfortunately, not always me. But anyway, John O'Donohue writes, the workplace can be a place of great competition. Management sometimes plays workers against each other. Consequently, when you go into work, you are in solo combat with your colleagues in terms of productivity. Your colleagues begin to appear as a threat, which reminds me there was a management philosophy at Ford years ago and at other places. I think Jack Welch did this also at GE, to purposely slot tell three people, here's your next job up, one of you three will get it. And therefore, are you going to work together as a team? I don't think so. Anyway, back to O'Donohue, where productivity becomes God, each individual is reduced to a function. It would be wonderful if the workplace were a place of real inspiration, with work engaging your creativity. Your gift would be welcomed there, your contribution seen. Work should not just serve the owners and employers alone. Work should also serve the workers and the community. I used to see that. I used to see local companies with a tie to the community, and they contributed to a lot. There was a company in Troy, Ohio that made appliances, essentially, Hobart, and the local ice arena and an arena for many things was Hobart Arena. There was a lot of Hobart stuff as the Hobart family and the company donated back to the community. And we see less and less of that as corporations take over and another corporation takes that over. Decisions are made farther and farther away, and the amount of community involvement begins to dwindle. Another thing that I was thinking about as I was reading O'Donohue, like I said, I started out in manufacturing, working on the production line, and that was a great experience. In other positions I had later on, I also was out in the plant in maybe some sort of management role. I was a sales engineer for a while, where I walked out into the plant and worked with anybody from engineers to electricians. To that particular job, I basically looked at machines and tried to solve problems. Did I have a product that would, I was a sales engineer, so do I have a product that would help them fix a machine, solve a problem, help them in the long run? And so what I discovered with all of that is not all the intelligence in a manufacturing enterprise is housed in upper management ranks. In fact, my experiences with upper management of large corporations was less than thrilling, shall we say. But they're working in a plant, yeah, you have degreed engineers and people with other degrees floating around in various management and supervisory roles. But you find the people, the individual people, so many of them are so creative and so smart. Sure, they don't have a college degree, but I'll tell you, I ran into, in my career, too many actually, but there shouldn't have been that many at all, degreed engineers that couldn't think logically and straight and solve a problem. If it would have been some sort of differential equations problem, they could have worked the diffie thing to an answer. But to look at a problem that comes up that isn't easily solved by math, they were lost. They couldn't like think things through, and even practical. I was told I should become an engineer for practical building stuff, and I go to college and discover that's not what engineering is at all. It's working all the math and formulas and so on, and those are valuable and they're good. I'm not going to knock them. And sometimes you actually use all those formulas in math. I had a job one time where once I had to that the problem involved integrals, and I had to stop and think. Oh yeah, I remember how to do integrals. Yeah, I haven't had to do it in years, and I haven't had to do it since. Just studied a book on calculus. It was kind of interesting, and I thought, oh, I remember some of this stuff. But did it help me solve problems? No, I solved problems using basically algebra and geometry were my key components. Algebra and geometry, both how to think and how to visualize. But but the guys on the shop floor, they may not have college degrees. They didn't even want one typically. It was too theoretical. But you ask them how to do the job and what would work better, and and suggestions for something else. Where is the problem? They could think through problems. They knew what the problems were. A lot of times they could give you an idea for a solution, put two or three of them together with somebody who could write a report or be able to talk to the plant manager or whatever that is. So you get a little collaboration going like that. Really, really good. I met really, really smart people in the ranks of maintenance people, maintenance tool people, electricians. Electricians knew more about electricity and programmable controllers and wiring relays than half of the electrical engineers I ran into. They were many really sharp people. Keven Meyer, and I'm going to point to a book called The Simple Leader by Keven Meyer. He has a website called Evolving Excellence. He's a lean guru. He retired as president of a manufacturing company, and he's been doing some additional research. He's a really smart fellow. But in The Simple Leader, he talks about lean. One of the core principles, a pillar of lean, is respect for people. And remembering that when you hire a person, you're not hiring a body, you're not just hiring a pair of hands, you're hiring a brain too, a whole person. And so often we as managers just overlook that fact, and we just treat them as a cog in a machine, just like Karl Marx saw in the 1830s when he was writing some of these essays. This is an important characteristic for people. And why do I bring all this up? And there's another point to this. Ever since I became an editor in 1998, we wrote articles about worker shortages that are going to happen because of the retirement of baby boomers. And for 20 years, we wrote the same article. It could have just been repurposed and didn't have to, talk about AI. We could have just like repurposed and put a new headline and a new byline, and bingo, that's what we're talking about. We're still talking about that. There are, a lot of boomers have retired. We didn't maybe necessarily need to hire as many people as we thought, but we still get articles about worker shortages. But another bigger problem seems to be hiring people that we can slot right into a job, whether it's a degreed engineer coming out. And although today, I'll tell you, if I could have gone to engineering school that they have these days rather than when I was in school, it would have been much different. A lot of them come out with hands-on experience in different kinds of things, which is really fantastic. I've met some chemical engineers really sharp, newer, millennials and younger, and so on. And because they've had more than just working out process equations and so on. But at any rate, we've got to bring people into manufacturing, and especially like recent high school graduates who haven't had exposure to much of anything. Businesses a long time ago, especially after World War II, kind of depended on the education system to provide them instead of the apprenticeships programs like my grandfather used to talk about. He apprenticed as a machinist at the Monarch Machine Tool Company and eventually learned how to make machine tools and so on, and that led to his eventual becoming the production superintendent in a GM plant. So, he could work his way up that way. Not happening so much. Schools became industrialized. Seth Godin likes to talk about this as schools are more industrialized, but they're industrialized by teaching people to come in, sit still, give the right answer back, work some basic math problems. Basically, they learn to come to a workplace, sit in their chair, tell the teacher what the teacher wants to know, and then go home. It's kind of an industrialized kind of thing. But that's not what we need. We need people that can think, that can solve problems, that can work with their hands to some degree or other. We need more than that. And so I've been getting a lot of press releases from companies that have various kinds of worker training and or worker like handheld devices to help them get through something. And I got a press release from a new company, and I had to wade through it because it was actually a pitch to do an article or more for me, and I don't take those. I'm not a magazine that's looking for free editorial, and I don't have to hire an editor or somebody to write it. But anyway, I worked through his proposal and everything and figured out what he's doing. The guy's oh shoot, I didn't put his first name in here. His name is Krager, and he has written a book called, oh, there we go, Derek. She's my son's name. I should remember that. Derek Krager is the founder and CEO of Practical AI. That's the name of the company. You find it at practicalai.app, app. And it's kind of interesting. He pitches himself as somebody who learned training and co-wrote or wrote an award-winning training program at Amazon. Yes, that's the place now that thinks it can replace all its workers with robots. But moving right along, and I haven't read his book. He did send a link to it. It's Human First AI. So Human First AI, which is pretty good. But this Practical AI company has come up with a thing to help these frontline new workers. He says, the real problem that comes, the real cost of this problem with finding employees and bringing them in is basically, he calls it an OEE problem. I'm not a real, OEE is too easy to game, but it's useful, or it can be useful if you're rigorous with it. Anyway, downtime, rework, attrition. That's just three things. Downtime, rework, attrition. It's not just a staffing problem, it's more than that. It leads to all these other problems. So his solution is something called just-in-time guidance. Take the right step at the exact moment of need where hands are on the task. Been writing about this for years too. I remember some things I wrote about around 1999 or 2000 when the technician is trying to fix something, and how do they communicate with some remote master specialist that can help troubleshoot that drive or whatever the heck might be going on. So this is not teaching the concept so much as multiplying your best expert across the line. So he called on his experience and he developed something called Pocket Mentor, a phone call to your best expert. It's a hands-free, eyes-free mentor your team reaches by phone anytime, on the floor or in the field. No app, no Wi-Fi, no passwords. Just tap and say, talk me through it. So how it works, capture once. We sit with your best people and harvest SOPs, changeovers, fault trees, what-if branches, tribal tricks, the real decision trees pros use when the line's on fire. Validate and govern. Content is approved by your SMEs and version controlled with human in the loop QA. Then you guide in the flow of work. A tech calls in, we ask 2 clarifying questions, model, symptom, then deliver step-by-step voice guidance they can follow while working hands-free, eyes-free from their device, hands and eyes on their device, their problem situation. Optimal enterprise integrations. We can use your digital twin / IoT signals today to enterprise integration to pre-fill context and so on. And he cites some stats to back up that what he does is useful. He says up to 80% faster onboarding, for new hires, about a 30% reduction in downtime and rework from this work, about a 53% lower early attrition because nobody wants to feel alone on the line, so the support drives retention. I can tell you, you get frustrated, you quit, right? So if you've got help right there in your pocket, that's fantastic. A 30 time impact versus traditional training because we replace recall with real-time execution. And 0 extra staffing to scale coaching. So it's a really cool idea. I've seen a number of these. I like hands-free. Like I said, I've been writing about these and studying them for a long time now, at least 25 years. And I keep seeing one new thing after another new thing come along. And this is pretty cool. And so I'll just kind of tell you about it here. Pocket Mentor by Practical AI. I have no skin in that game. I'm not paid by anything. He sent me this and I read it and I thought, okay, this is a useful tool. I think I'll pass it along. So I'm passing it along with some ideas about a more humane workplace. Just think about it. When you can help people succeed, that's just a win for all of us. I want my techs, I want to tap into their brains, but I want to help them, nudge them along, and the next time they run into that, they'll know what to do because they've been talked through it, and that's good. And so that'll help us. It's not as good as the apprenticeship my grandfather went through, but we're getting on that track of really helping these new hires come along and become more efficient technicians. So that's my talk about today, thinking about work and thinking about everyone there, not just top management, but directors and all those sorts of people and engineers that have a lot of education and can bring a lot of stuff to bear. But tapping into the hands and brains of all of our workers everywhere in the plant. Heck, when I moved into management, I found out that back in the 70s, they called them the girls, in the office, quote unquote. They, the women that worked in there, the clerks and assistants and all those people, about 90% were women back in the day. I don't know today, probably a lot of them aren't around, but they kept the office running. We might have had a purchasing manager male, but the 3 women in the office ran purchasing, I'll tell you. So tap into the brains, tap into that more than just the hands of the people that are working for you. Another thought, you can check out themanufacturingconnection.com for my daily thoughts, or almost daily. I write something in there or more. And you can click follow on the bottom of the page at the Manufacturing Connection to get a weekly email update that'll send you links to everything I wrote that week. And also there's an envelope on the right sidebar, and I occasionally write another essay and send it out as a newsletter form. A couple of extra things you can do. And a reminder, for my longtime sponsor, whom I appreciate greatly, today's podcast is sponsored by Inductive Automation, makers of Ignition, the world's most versatile industrial automation platform for connecting data, systems, and people. With the new Ignition 8.3 release, you can easily manage time series and event data, quickly create custom graphics with onboard drawing tools, and centralize control using Ignition's new gateway interface with global search and deep link launching. Providing additional support for Git, containers, and private data protection to go along with its unlimited licensing, Ignition 8.3 takes industrial operations to the next level. You can download Ignition for free at inductiveautomation.com. Thank you. Have a good day, and couple of key words: be kind, be generous. Thank you.